Well, good morning, everybody. The pattern we have been in for so long, one that favored a deep trough over the Great Lakes and a big ridge over the west. It's the one that delivered all of the very cold air into parts of the Midwest, the Mid-South, all the way down to the southeast here over the last few days, giving us a very early frost for parts of the south and southeast and mid-south. Well, that pattern's gone, and it's on its way out. And as it leaves, just take a look at what these temperatures are going to do. This is today's high temperature forecast, and the color shading represents anomalies. You can see the cooler air exiting east as much colder air by the time we get into Saturday dives into the western part of the United States. Now, the overall storm trajectory is coming through the northwest and is expected to eject on Saturday night into Sunday into the northern plains. And as it does so, it's going to draw in quite a bit of warm air out of the south. Very strong southerly winds could take temperatures here almost 30 degrees above normal, sending temperatures back up into the mid-80s on Saturday here. And this is already after a warm Friday. On Sunday, we're going to keep a very close eye on this corridor for the potential for strong to severe storms as we destabilize the atmosphere with such warm conditions, put in a very strong cold front, and combine that with quite a bit of moisture from the Gulf. It's just a recipe for seeing quite a few storms, and we'll take a closer look at that in a second. But the temperature pattern is going to be quite volatile with this new pattern, and the new pattern favors deeper troughs over the west. So what happens is each time one of these massive fronts comes rolling through the United States, the temperatures really drop off quickly behind it, but then they're expected to recover. So we just played this out to next Thursday, and I'll tell you, going into that first week in November, we'll see rebounding temperatures in the midsection of the country once again. If there's a place that's going to mostly stay cold for probably much of the next month or so, it is going to be the western part of the United States. Now, in the western United States today, we have a lot of colors here in our all hazards weather map, and they each represent a different hazard. There's mostly, throughout the whole region, wind advisories, wind warnings. We do have frost and freeze issues in parts of Nevada, but the color I'm getting quite concerned about is this one right in through here, which extends into parts of Oklahoma and actually all the way over to Missouri, where we've got red flag warnings that are in place. I would expect to see these expand over the weekend ahead of the storm system, which is going to deliver some rainfall. I'll take a look at that in a second. We do have winter storm watches and winter storm warnings throughout parts of the northern Rockies, and we're about to our last day here of having the air quality issues over parts of the Pacific Northwest, specifically in the Cascades. This will also be the last couple of days we see, or the last day, where we'll see a frost advisory here. So this is the change. That is the nose of an extended piece of the polar branch of the Pacific Jet that is just now this morning entering the Pacific Northwest. What will be critical will be to watch the phasing of this wave as it digs across the mountains and ejects here into the north central plains with the cutoff, well, it's almost cut off, but this low right down here that is off the Baja of California and really off of the southwest California coast. Now, these two features are going to be coming together. I think it's important for us to just look at how and why and when they're going to come together. So what ends up happening is the why. The depth of this trough is enough to be bringing in winds around its base to grab hold of that low that's sitting here off of the coast of California. So what we're going to see here is that going into Sunday, we're going to have two waves that are trying to phase together. The lead wave, the bigger one, ejects on Sunday night right here, and the secondary one gets picked up by the backside of this trough and pulled through Texas and into Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and Illinois through next week. So we're going to have two separate systems, one that goes to the north like this, and then a second that comes up like this early next week. And by the way, I don't want to discount this. We do have a low right over here off the coast that we're going to watch on Saturday and Sunday, possibly spread some heavier rain into parts of New England. Now, the Storm Prediction Center has got this on their Day 3 outlook as a marginal risk for strong to severe storms, but we could see a line of storms stretching from Wisconsin and Minnesota all the way down into parts of Texas out of this. So let's get right on into it. One of the big threats I'm concerned about is wind. So you can see that through the next 36 hours, winds throughout the Great Basin, parts of the Pacific Northwest, just really in general throughout the Intermountain West, will be gusting, and this will be enhanced by elevation, but could be gusting in that 30 to 60 mile an hour range. Then as the storm system shows up on Saturday through Sunday, here in the plains, we could get synoptic scale winds that could be in that 30 to 50 mile an hour range as well. And the problem with that is that there's a lot of extremely dry conditions here. This could produce blowing dust. This could produce blowing debris from harvested fields. And those stronger winds are really just going to be throughout such a large bit of real estate here in the midsection of the country. Now, this is the wind field outside of the thunderstorms, which could on their own produce very strong winds. But if we go look at it from the European model, here we go. This is through Friday evening. getting into Saturday morning, afternoon, and evening. So this is where we're expecting the potential for very heavy snow in parts of the Northern Rockies here. That's why they have the winter storm warnings out. Then we play through Sunday morning, Sunday midday, and Sunday evening. Now, this will be the point where we'll have extremely strong winds. See how tightly spaced the isobars are? Heavy snow is possible in Colorado, Utah, Wyoming, parts of Montana, and then stretching into southern Saskatchewan and eventually to Manitoba. What we'll be watching for that evening is right here along this line. That's where the main front will be, interacting with all that moisture coming up out of the Gulf to initiate a series of storms. They may start off as discrete storms and then line out very quickly, but there could be some damage from these storms in this area. Believe it or not, it's still too early to assess the full timing of it. So that system moves on through parts of the Red River Valley of the North with a deep dry slot behind it. We'll show you more about that in a second, and then pulls into Ontario. Now, the second wave, which I'm rocking over here, comes out of New Mexico and Texas on Saturday, Sunday, and starts to draw its moisture, linking it up with the main front from the first system on Monday night. And so we're going to watch this area for the potential for more strong storms and also the potential for very heavy rainfall. This, again, is the second wave. And the second wave is going to ride this front right into parts of, watch, there comes out of Arkansas and Missouri and eventually into Illinois and Indiana by the time we get to next Wednesday. And following it is the next low. So we stitch all this together and we say how much rain are we expecting over the next 7 days. And you can see that the major concern I've got is this area right in through here that's going to get dry slotted. That's critical for Texas. Panhandles of Texas, but getting here into the panhandle of Oklahoma and then into Kansas. That's what I meant to say. And then up into parts of Nebraska. But there's the chance out of these next two systems that parts of the Mid-South getting over toward the Southern Plains and this section of the Midwest could get 2 to 4 inches of rain out of this. Now in the West, we're going to be largely talking about snow. I'll show you that in a second. But this is the European model. Here's the GFS. The difference in the models is important because the GFS is much wetter. Take a look at this. Coming out of the panhandles into Kansas through Iowa. In other words, it links the cutoff low with the main front coming through much sooner, and that's why you see the heavier precipitation being forecast by the GFS here. The European's wetter farther to the south and east. That's a very important distinction between the two models. Now, the National Weather Service tries to blend these two things together, and this is what you get from their WPC forecast for today over the next 7 days. In terms of snowfall, let's take a close look at this. This is just this morning's operational European run. It's not very wise of us to look at snowfall amounts at this point. We're just trying to look to see where the models are placing the bands of heaviest snow. So of course it's going to be oriented with the mountains given the trajectory of this system. We could pick up over a foot in parts of the Rockies here and maybe much more than that in parts of the Cascades. But coming out here into the western plains, into parts of the western side of the Dakotas, Montana, and then this stretch right in through here has been very consistently forecast through Saskatchewan and northern Manitoba to get some heavier snow. That's where the European model also paints, at least on the plains, the best location for picking up at least 3 inches. Of course, we'll top those amounts in the mountains. Now, longer term, just stretch this out to 10 days. The pattern is not reverting back to what it was. We have this extended branch of the jet, which is now more zonal through the Gulf of Alaska, which delivers more troughs into the northwestern part of the United States versus the large Rex block we've been talking about for so very long. So we think about all of that and just say that you stitch together the next 15 days, it just tends to give you a pattern that takes storm systems like this. With some ridging over the southeast, that could mean that from southern Texas through the southeast, maybe into parts of New England, we have more drier days than we do wetter. But certainly some very wet conditions coming in through here. Now, where this all kind of plays out is as we start to examine this with respect to the longer term forecast, which I discuss in today's report. You see the November 4th to December 4th outlook continues this pattern, doesn't back off on it. And where this becomes a critical discussion, which is going to be, I'll put in that in my in-depth report, which I'm going to release in a little while here today on Friday, we're going to talk about what this means for the Mississippi watershed. And I put some of that in today's report, so please read that. But what you've got here is the latest 16-inch soil moisture data from NASA. And what we discuss is how long it would take to revive the soil moisture here, what that would do in terms of getting the water to percolate through the ground into the tributaries and eventually into the main river systems that feed the Mississippi, in an ultimate attempt to answer when we're going to be breaking this Mississippi watershed problem. In addition to that, in today's report, last couple things I cover is what's going on in South America. Give you an updated map of the root zone soil moisture and discuss the extent of the drought in parts of Argentina. It has rained in parts of Argentina, and there's a little bit forecast, but it's the longer-term deficits near Buenos Aires over toward Cordoba that are really showing up to be problematic this spring. And the new long-range forecast from the European model just doubled down on those issues. So while we continue to see normal to above normal planting pace north, southern Brazil, getting into parts of Paraguay, Uruguay, and Argentina, continue to be forecast to stay in drought conditions. And that's going to be an issue going through the rest of the spring towards summer here in South America. So I appreciate your attention this week. I will talk to you again Monday. Thanks.